if you want to avoid all the sickness this winter, the snotty noses, the coughs, the colds, the sleepless nights, the fevers, the Panadol and the antibiotics, the ear infections, the grumpy, tired kids, the days off work and school and childcare, are all those memories of last winter coming back? I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way this winter. I have a free online masterclass, 3 simple ways to boost your kids' immunity to avoid a winter full of sickness. It's on demand, meaning you can register and watch it straight away or watch it at a time that is convenient for you. Head on over to naturalsuperkids.com/immune and you will be able to sign up. In the masterclass, I am covering our natural, simple and effective approach to avoiding winter infections, how to boost your family's immunity with our proven 3-step naturopathic strategy that is really easy for you to implement as a busy mum. We're going to talk about the immune depleters that you need to avoid so you're not wasting time and money building up your kids' immunity that is just being depleted by these common foods and environmental factors. I am sharing heaps of practical tips. I promise it will be an hour well spent. You can register again at naturalsuperkids.com/immune. I can't wait to hear how you find it and to give you the tips to make this winter healthier. Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello. Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast. Jessica Donovan here. Today I want to dive into the 2 most important dietary tweaks to consider implementing when it comes to ADHD. So this can be ADHD in a child or an adult, and also it's going to be relevant for people whose kids are maybe presenting with some of the symptoms that are common in ADHD. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that you have an ADHD diagnosis. And of course, ADHD symptoms can vary from child to child. The presentation can be very different, but I'm talking about things like hyperactivity, inattention, impulsive behaviour, behavioural challenges, sleep challenges, mood challenges as well. And so the things that we're going to talk about, the dietary modifications or tweaks, are relevant for all of these things, and also for a child's mood, sleep, and behaviour in general. So let's dive in and talk about the first one. So what I want to talk about first is balancing macronutrients in the diet. Now, when I'm talking about macronutrients, I'm talking about proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Now, I don't like to get too in the detail about these when it comes to children and when it comes to adults as well. Like, I'm definitely not into weighing or measuring, but what we commonly see in children across the board, whether they are ADHDers or not, is that this macronutrient balance is way out of whack in most kids, or in a lot of kids. And the common kind of imbalance that we see is that kids' macronutrient balance is way too high on the carbohydrate side, and it's lacking protein and healthy fats. And within those carbohydrates are the more unfavorable types of carbohydrates are being consumed more heavily by children. Now, the reason that macronutrient balance is important when we're talking about supporting kids that have been diagnosed with ADHD or have, presenting symptoms similar to ADHD is because when we've got that balance right, it's really going to support brain health overall. It's going to balance out energy levels. It's going to balance out mood, and it's also going to improve focus and concentration and learning. And so let's talk through these different macronutrients for anyone who's not familiar with, what food protein is included in. And I want to give you a guide, a rough guide as to, how to ensure that your kids are getting a good balance of these macronutrients. So let's start with protein. Protein is so important. Protein is involved in repair and growth of our cells and our body tissues. And protein is found in a wide range of foods. It's important for everyone, extra important for children who have a lot of growth and development going on. Diving a little bit kind of into the detail of protein is made of building blocks of amino acids, and the body can make 11 amino acids, which are known as non-essential amino acids because the body can make them. But there are also 9 amino acids that the body cannot make itself, and these are known as your essential amino acids, meaning we need to get those through the diet. And so protein is important for that reason, among many others. If you are vegetarian or vegan, it is harder to get enough protein into your diet, and you need to really be more aware of this and making sure that you're getting a combination of protein-rich plant foods to get the adequate mix of essential amino acids that make up proteins. And so protein is primarily, found in animal products, but it is found in some plant sources as well. So we're talking about things like meat and fish and eggs and dairy products. And then the plant sources are things like nuts and seeds and legumes like beans and lentils. And as a general rule, we want our kids to be consuming about a palm size up to a hand-sized portion of protein at every meal. And what we're commonly seeing in kids is that a lot of kids aren't really consuming much protein at all until dinner time. And then, there's a lot of fussy kids that aren't even consuming adequate protein at dinner time. So we want to be, mindful of getting protein into our kids at breakfast, at lunch, and at dinner. And so that palm to hand size serving of some meat, some fish, from some eggs, some dairy products if they're tolerated, and plant sources as well, as I said, seeds, nuts, legumes, and beans. And if possible, we want fresh forms of protein, not too many sort of processed meat forms of protein. So that's protein. And then we have carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates are a primary source of energy for our kids' bodies and our bodies as well. And if our kids are consuming too many of the simple carbohydrates, the carbohydrates that are digested quickly by the body and create a rush of glucose in the bloodstream, this is going to consuming these simple forms of carbohydrates is going to lead to energy levels that are all over the place, hyperactivity. I'm sure we've all seen this from with our kids that are eating too many simple carbohydrates, high sugar foods. So we really want to focus on those complex carbohydrates in our kids' diets, which take longer to digest. They release glucose into the bloodstream at a more steady pace, and they don't cause that that rush of glucose in the bloodstream, and the mood and energy effects that kind of come with that. And so, those simple carbohydrates are the high sugar foods, the lollies, the sugars, the refined flour, the cakes, the muffins, the muesli bars, are all examples of simple carbohydrate foods. Complex carbohydrates, on the other hand, are things like whole grains and fibrous foods. So the brown rice, the oats, the quinoa, the spelt, the buckwheat, the whole grain flour products, as well as starchy vegetables and legumes such as beans and lentils also contain these complex carbohydrates as well. So fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates as well, contain carbohydrates. They also contain, vitamins and minerals and fiber. And so they are an ideal source of carbohydrates for our kids' bodies as well. So again, the pattern that we see is kids that are eating too many simple, sugary carbohydrates and not enough of those complex carbohydrates that are more conducive to more balanced blood sugar levels, more balanced energy levels, but more balanced moods as well. Of course, carbohydrates are important for our children. As I said, they're a fuel source, and we want to try and prioritize complex carbohydrates. And around a fist size of complex carbohydrates per meal is ideal. And remembering that palm to hand size portion of protein alongside that as well. And then we can add some veggies separate to that. A handful of veggies is a good sort of guide to aim for kids. And that could be some cut up veggies. It could be veggies pureed into a soup. It could be veggies throughout a meal. It could be some salad on a roll or a wrap in the lunchbox. So serving your child's preferred way of eating veggies is absolutely fine. And I also understand that, for some fussy kids, there's no way they're getting a handful of veggies in at every meal. This is something to aim towards. But getting that mix of protein and carbohydrates and what we're going to be talking about next, fats, is really important. So let's talk about fats. So fats are, have got a bad rap from the dietary information that was kind of very prevalent in the 70s and 80s that we should avoid fats for good cardiovascular health. But the truth is that fats are a very important, the right sorts of fats are a very important and nourishing part of our body. Healthy fats can boost brain function. They can keep our kids fuller for longer and us fuller for longer as well. And so, fats have a bad rap for lots of different reasons, but fats are an important part of a healthy diet. And when it comes to fats, we want to be thinking about the more natural fats, the olive oil, the avocado, the fats on good quality meat, the fats within fish. These are all great sources of healthy fats for our children. Fats within nuts and seeds are a good example as well. The fats that we want to be avoiding are the more processed fats, in cooking oils and things like corn oil and soybean oil, and even things like canola oil and sunflower oil, which tend to be higher in omega-6 fatty acids, which promote inflammation rather than decreasing inflammation like the omega-3s do. So omega-3s are a particular type of fat that are especially helpful when it comes to brain health, for mood, for cognition, and for supporting our kids' ability to learn, to concentrate, to memorize when it comes to that overall brain health. So we want to be prioritizing things like fish, like nuts and seeds, like olive oil, avocados, when it comes to healthy fats in our children's diets. And when it comes to fats and in terms of how much, you only need a little amount of fats. So we're talking about things like a a fingertip sort of serving of fat. It could be a bit bigger if it was like avocado, for example. But we're talking about like a teaspoon of olive oil or some nut butter, some nuts and seeds. A lot of the time, fat will be incorporated into meals if they contain, meat and fish as well. So don't forget the fat that's naturally sort of incorporated into a meal. So for some of you, that may have been information you were already aware of. And for others, that might be new information. And you might feel a bit like, oh, hang on, I feel overwhelmed with that. So I really just want to come back to basics. Make sure you're including some protein, some healthy fats, and some complex carbohydrates in each of your kids' meals. Or aim to, you might not quite be there yet, but just being aware of the importance of that balance in your kids' meals and the positive impact that will have on their brain health, their energy levels, those more sustained, balanced energy levels rather than the ups and the downs and the hyperactivity and then the, lows and fatigue when it comes to their concentration, their learning, and those more balanced moods as well. And the next thing that I want to talk about is additives. So, talking about that macronutrient balance is definitely the first step, and working on getting that balance right. And next is to just be aware and careful when it comes to additives in the diet. Now, this is a huge topic. Put simply, food additives are ingredients, compounds used within food to improve the flavour or the appearance of food. And to avoid additives altogether is difficult and probably unrealistic unless you're sticking to a 100% whole food diet. Of course, foods straight from nature, fruits and vegetables and, meats and legumes and nuts and seeds don't naturally contain any additives. Food additives are added to prolong shelf life, to sweeten foods, to alter the colour of foods, to prevent clumping or clotting of ingredients, to change the texture of foods, to maintain moisture levels within food or maintain acid levels within food. So the best way to reduce your kids' intake of additives is to eat more whole foods, and they will naturally start to, reduce that additive intake. But, we want to talk about, why additives are important to start to think about reducing, and also why this is important in certain kids. I guess additives are not good for anyone, but there are some additives that are okay and some additives that are more harmful than others. But when it comes to kids that are neurodiverse, that are autistic, that have been diagnosed with ADHD, that have sensory processing disorders, or even kids that have impaired gut health or immune imbalances, it becomes more important to really consider these additives and to focus on reducing them in your child's diet, because these kids tend to be more sensitive to the effects of additives within their systems, because they do, affect the neurological system, they can affect the immune system, they can lead to inflammation, they can negatively affect the gut as well. And of course, the famous or infamous effect of additives within the diet are, related to behaviour and mood and concentration in our kids, which is important when we're talking about ADHD. So some overall tips on reducing additives in your kids' diet. Number one is to read food labels. Don't take notice of the health claims on the front of a pack. It might say low in sugar or no added sugar or high in fiber or, high in antioxidants. Ignore those health claims on the front. Instead, turn the packet over and have a look at the ingredient list. Additives are usually chemical sounding names or numbers on the list. And so you want to be choosing foods that have fewer numbers on the list, preferably no numbers at all. And you want to be avoiding those chemical sounding names. Another, overall tip for reducing your child's intake of additives is to choose plain products over flavored products. When you're choosing crackers or chips or corn chips, just to name a couple of examples, the plain varieties rather than the cheesy, the barbecue chicken, the sour cream and chives are always going to have less additives. Plain potato chips are always going to be a better option than a flavored potato chip because the way they get that flavor in is with additives. So plain over flavored wherever you can. And watch out for sweetened foods as well. So when products claim to be sugar-free or 0 calorie or diet or no added sugar, this can also mean that they have artificial sweeteners instead of sugar added, and artificial sweeteners are a type of additive. So things like lollies and gum or chewing gum, yogurts and soft drinks are some of the common foods that may say, sugar-free, 0 calorie, no added sugar. Look, some of these are going to be a better choice than the sugar options if they contain more natural-based sweeteners, but a lot of them will contain more artificial sweeteners, which are a type of additive that we want to be avoiding. The other thing we can do is limit artificially coloured foods and also drinks as well. So, the coloured with some things are obviously coloured, the soft drinks, for example, or the brightly coloured candy or lollies, but some are not as obvious. So just check for artificial colours within food lists. And usually these foods are very high in sugar as well. Another thing you can do is go for the least processed option. So it's not just the sweet, snacky foods that contain additives. It can be some of the staples that we use within our kitchen as well. So a good example of this is cheese. So a block of cheese won't have many, if any, additives at all, but grated cheese or sliced cheese will have things like anti-caking agents or other additives added, because once you're processing, slicing food up, it needs to have additives added to it so that it prolongs the shelf life and so it doesn't go moldy within a couple of days. Thinking about the least processed option, even if it takes you that little bit more work to slice up the cheese yourself or get your kids involved in the kitchen doing it for you or with you as well, that's always going to be better in terms of additives. And lastly, this is an obvious one, focus on more whole foods. This is always going to be the best way to reduce your child's intake of additives, flavorings, colorings that could be detrimental to their neurological systems, their brain, and the symptoms that can be associated with ADHD. So to be best supporting our kids with ADHD, we want to be thinking about that macronutrient balance and the additives. Of course, there's so many more things that we can do. And we do have a brain health bundle that can really help you implement some of these changes. So in our brain health bundle, I'll make sure the link is in the show notes, but if you go to naturalsuperkids.com/brain bundle, all one word, brain bundle, you will get to the information about this. This is a bundle of resources we have that are great for brain health, for ADHD, for supporting kids with ADHD, and they include a balancing macronutrients guide. So really kind of diving into what we talked about in terms of the balance of macronutrients into your child's diet. So as we've talked about, balancing the macronutrients, the protein, the carbohydrates, and the fats in your child's diet, and reducing their intake of additives are two of the really important things you can do to support your kids with ADHD. And if you want to dive into this further, we have an amazing resource for you. It is our Brain Health Bundle. You can find it at naturalsuperkids.com/brain bundle, all one word. And in this bundle, you will get access to 4 resources. So the first one is our Balancing Macronutrients Guide, which dives into the information that we talked about on today's podcast and exactly how you can, work towards a more balanced macronutrient meal for your kids and why this is important. So it will really help you implement those changes that we talked about on today's podcast. One of the other resources within this bundle is our additives, flavouring and colouring guide. So our AFC-free diet guide, which is all about not just why to reduce additives in your child's diet, but also the most important ones to focus on removing from your kids' diet. So that's all included in that guide. And we also have some really handy resources to help you implement a healthier diet to improve and support brain health. So one of those is our 12 recipes to improve your kids' mood, sleep, and behaviour. And the other one is a guide on nutrition, specific nutrients to improve your kids' mood, behaviour, and mental health. So you can find this bundle, as I said, at naturalsuperkids.com/brain bundle. And we'll make sure the link to that is in the show notes. I hope you found today's episode helpful and you've learned something new. Let me know by getting in touch with me on Instagram what you are going to change, what you are going to tweak in your child's diet based on what we've talked about in today's episode. You can find us over on Instagram at Natural Super Kids. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week. Before you go, don't forget about my free online on-demand masterclass, 3 simple ways to naturally boost your kids' immunity to avoid a winter full of sickness. I'm sharing my practical tips on ways that you can strengthen your whole family's immune system to avoid the onslaught of winter infections so your family can stay healthy and well this winter. You can sign up at naturalsuperkids.com/immune.